This segment on anthocyanins and other phenolics is part of the topic colorants in food. Before we proceed, please mind this copyright notice. We are not supposed to reproduce or communicate or share the material to others outside the course. Any violation may be subject to copyright infringement, and the copyright owners have the right to take legal action against such infringement. In Part 4, anthocyanins and other phenolics, will follow the usual sequence of subtopics: introduction, structures, properties, and preservation of these pigments. What are anthocyanins? The term refers to a class of water-soluble pigments with a carbon skeleton characteristic of the flavonoid group of phenolics. They are widely distributed in the plant world, imparting most colors except yellow and green. Before we proceed, let's first clarify what flavonoids are. Flavonoids are a diverse group of naturally occurring polyphenolic compounds widely distributed in fruits, vegetables, grains, herbs, spices, nuts, seeds, tea, cocoa, coffee, and wine, where they contribute to the color, flavor, and aroma of these foods. Flavonoids are classified into several subgroups based on their chemical structure, particularly the three-carbon chain between two benzene rings. They include flavones, flavanones, flavanols, flavanonols, isoflavones, anthocyanidins, and many others. Note that various references present different groupings of flavonoids. Among the different flavonoid subgroups, anthocyanidins are closest to anthocyanins in structure. They have the same base structure, the flavillum ion, but anthocyanidins do not have any sugar moiety, while the anthocyanins do. The word anthocyanin has Greek roots, having been derived from anthos, which means flower in Greek, and kyanos, which means blue. This explains why anthocyanins have been originally associated with blue flowers, berries, and grapes. These natural colorants can also be found in some leafy vegetables, in grains like pigmented rice, in roots, and tubers. Beyond imparting various colors, anthocyanidins and anthocyanins are valued also for their health benefits as potent antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds. Understanding that oxidative and inflammatory issues contribute to chronic health problems deepens our appreciation for anthocyanidins and anthocyanins. Let's repeat the key concepts for clarity. Anthocyanins are sugar-substituted anthocyanidins. Anthocyanidins are a group of sugar-free flavonoids among many others, and flavonoids are a class of phenolic compounds. Flavonoids are classified into several subgroups based on their chemical structure, particularly the three-carbon chain between two benzene rings. They include flavones, isoflavones, flavonols, flavanonols, flavanones, anthocyanidins, and many others. Note that various references present different groupings of flavonoids. Among the flavonoid subgroups, anthocyanidins are most like anthocyanins, differing only in terms of the sugar moiety and the related acyl groups in anthocyanins. The group of compounds that encompass them all are called phenolics. They are products of plant secondary metabolism with at least one phenol moiety, and a phenol is an organic compound bearing a hydroxyl group attached to a carbon atom which is part of an aromatic or benzene ring. Besides anthocyanins, there are other pigments which are also flavonoids. These include anthocyanthins, proanthocyanidins, and others. Shown at the bottom of the slide is the basic structure of flavonoids with a C6C3 C6 carbon skeleton. This is called 2-phenylbenzopyrrolium cation, or in literature, it is more commonly referred to as flavillum salt or simply flavillum ion. The structure consists of two benzene rings, again referred to as ring A and ring B, linked by a 3-carbon chain. I used colored lines to highlight the 3-carbon chain for you to better appreciate the structures in the next slides. Before we zero in on the structure of anthocyanins, let's segue a bit to recall the structures of flavonoids, highlighting anthocyanidins, the aglycone or sugar-free counterparts of anthocyanins. Shown here are the carbon skeletons of some important flavonoids. I traced the 3-carbon chains between rings A and B so that you can see that these flavonoids, except isoflavones, follow the same C6C3C6 pattern. Shown on the right are the same flavonoids but without the colored tracing for you to see where the double bonds are. They aren't visible in the structures on the left due to the colored lines drawn over them. Double bonds indicate electron mobility. The greater the mobility of electrons, the more easily a molecule becomes excited when exposed to visible light at its resonant wavelength. Both anthocyanins and their aglycone counterparts can be excited by visible light. When a molecule absorbs a light ray, it transitions to an excited state, emitting energy as it returns to its ground state. This emitted energy does not explain the color we perceive. It is the unabsorbed or reflected visible energy that manifests as color. Anthocyanidins produce lighter hues compared to their anthocyanin counterparts because the presence of more substituents in the latter leads to deeper hues, owing to the increased number of double bonds. Let's examine chalcone. It's an open-chain flavonoid linked by the usual 3-carbon spacer between the two aromatic rings. It's the only open-chain flavonoid in this group. During biosynthesis, chalcones are precursors to flavonoids having a third ring, that's ring C, in addition to rings A and B. Chalcone-like compounds may also be formed from anthocyanins and other flavonoids when they undergo structural modification in response to exposure to high pH. These modifications typically involve the loss of sugar moiety and rearrangement of the anthocyanidin molecule. At higher pH levels, anthocyanins can lose a proton from their hydroxyl groups, leading to the formation of colorless chalcone-like structures known as chalcone pseudobases or chalcone-like derivatives. These derivatives are characterized by the presence of a double bond between two aromatic rings, similar to chalcones, but lack the carbonyl group found in typical chalcones. Aside from chalcones, all the other flavonoids shown here have a third ring arising partly from the 3-carbon chain, forming an oxygenated heterocycle. Examine the other flavonoids and try to relate their names to their structures. Note the number of double bonds present and what these imply. Note also that most of them have ketone and alcohol functional groups. Let's focus on anthocyanidins this time. Among the flavonoids shown here, only anthocyanidins have a positive charge at the oxygen atom of ring C of the basic flavonoid structure. The basic structure of anthocyanidin and, by extension, anthocyanin is called the flavillum ion, or more specifically, flavillum cation. Notice that anthocyanidins are also among a small group of flavonoids lacking a ketone oxygen at the 4 position. What does this imply? Imagine the flavinium ion at the top as having hydroxyl and or methoxy groups. Due to substitutions with hydroxyl and or methoxy groups in the base structure, anthocyanidins and anthocyanins are more aptly called polyhydroxy and or polymethoxy derivatives of flavinium salt. This explains why anthocyanins are sometimes referred to as flavinium cation-based pigments. If at least one sugar moiety is attached to the flavinium ion, then anthocyanidins, which are aglycons or sugar-free compounds, become anthocyanins. Specific anthocyanins are glycosidic forms of their respective anthocyanidins. At the bottom of this figure from the paper of Sunil and Shetty are examples of anthocyanins, namely cyanidin 3-glucoside, pelargonidin 3-glucoside, and delphinidin 3-glucoside, which are products of glycosylation of their respective anthocyanidins, namely cyanidin, pelargonidin, and delphinidin. This shows that for each anthocyanin, there is a corresponding anthocyanidin, differing only in terms of the sugar moiety and related acyl groups. Let's go back to our discussion of the structure of anthocyanins. Various types of anthocyanins differ in terms of, number 1, the number of hydroxyl and or methoxy groups present in the structure, as well as, number 2, the types, number, and attachment sites of sugars to the basic structure, and number 3, the type and number of aliphatic or aromatic acids attached to these sugars. Considering the figure below, R1 and R2 can be a hydrogen atom or a hydroxyl or a methoxy group, while R3 is a glycosyl, meaning a monovalent radical from the cyclic form of glucose resulting from the abstraction of the hemiacetal hydroxyl group. And R4 can be a hydrogen atom or a glycosyl. To simplify, think of glycosyl as a simple carbohydrate or as a sugar moiety. Because of this diversity, it is justified that there are more than 700 identified anthocyanins in plants. We have been mentioning that the presence of sugars spells the difference between anthocyanins and anthocyanidins. Anthocyanins are glycosides. They have a sugar group or groups attached, while anthocyanidins, also called aglycons, have no sugar group. What sugars may attach to anthocyanidins to form anthocyanins? Sugars involved in the glycosylation of an anthocyanidin molecule can be glucose, galactose, rhamnose, arabinose, xylose, and even di or trisaccharides. The presence of sugars makes anthocyanins more water-soluble. The sugar moieties in anthocyanins are highly polar and can form hydrogen bonds with water molecules. These sugars increase the overall polarity of the molecule, making them more hydrophilic and thus more soluble in water. The sugar group or groups can stabilize the flavinium cation form of anthocyanins. That's the most stable form in acidic conditions such as in fruits or juices or extracts. Sugars help prevent degradation by sterically hindering reactive sites and by reducing oxidation by stabilizing electron distribution. When anthocyanins lose their sugar moiety, they revert back to their anthocyanidin or aglycon form. Aside from a lower solubility of anthocyanidins in water, they are also less stable than anthocyanins. Without the protective sugar moiety, anthocyanidins are more prone to degradation due to their unprotected and reactive structure, despite being less soluble in water. Take note that anthocyanidins are more prone to two things. First, they're more prone to nucleophilic attack by water, especially at the carbon 2 position of the flavillum ring in neutral or basic pH, leading to ring opening and loss of color. Second, they're more prone to oxidation and breakdown under light, oxygen, and metal catalysis. We have a question here. Why does ring opening lead to color loss? Let's examine this illustration to appreciate the impact of the number of oxochrome groups. These are structures with no chromophoric properties like hydroxyl and or methoxy groups, but can affect the properties of chromophoric molecules like anthocyanidins and anthocyanins. The chemical structures presented here are the frequently occurring anthocyanidins found in many plant parts and food products. The number and position of hydroxyl groups in ring B of anthocyanidins significantly influence their chemical properties, color characteristics, and stability. Let's focus first on the structures of pelargonidin, cyanidin, and delphinidin, three compounds that differ only in the number of hydroxyl groups attached to the B ring. Increasing substitution with hydroxyl groups in the B ring of anthocyanidins tends to result in more intense hues because the hydroxyl groups contribute to the conjugated system of double bonds in the molecule, increasing the absorption of visible light. Within the visible region of the electromagnetic spectrum, which spans roughly from 380 to 740 nanometers, anthocyanidins like delphinidin absorb light more efficiently compared to pelargonidin and cyanidin, around 500 to 590 nanometers. When delphinidin absorbs visible light through transitions in their conjugated pi electron systems, electrons are excited from a lower to a higher molecular orbital, and when the excited electrons return to the ground state, most of the absorbed energy is released through non-radiative pathways. Therefore, we don't see light being emitted from the molecule directly. Instead, we see the color of the light that is not absorbed. For delphinidin, it absorbs green and yellow light, so we perceive the remaining reflected or transmitted light as blue to purple. Various references say different things about the shifts that happen with increased hydroxylation. This illustration shows a hyperchromic shift. That's an increased intensity of absorption at the same wavelength. Therefore, a stronger blue hue, as more hydroxyl groups are added. Focusing on the arrow with a blue hue alone at the bottom, and excluding the arrow with a red hue in the diagram, a simplistic illustration would be imagining pelargonidin as light blue, cyanidin as moderate blue, cyan is blue, right? And delphinidin as dark blue. This increase in color intensity or hyperchromic shift involves an increased absorption of visible light at a particular wavelength. There's no change in wavelength involved if we consider just the blue arrow, indicating just a change in blueness. Now, let's include the red hue. All three, pelargonidin, cyanidin, and delphinidin, have the same redness or intensity of the red hue. This constant red hue, when combined with different intensities of blue, makes different shades of purple as hydroxyl groups are added. Therefore, we can imagine pelargonidin, cyanidin, and delphinidin as light purple, bluish purple, and deep blue purple. By the way, purple is a perceived color. It is a color that's created in our brains. It is not a spectral color unlike red or blue or violet, which have a single or definite wavelength in the visible spectrum. Red and blue, the colors that become purple when mixed, are at the opposite ends of the visible spectrum. So purple is created by how our brain processes mixed signals from different parts of the spectrum. Besides the hyperchromic shift that we've discussed, it is also possible for a bathochromic shift or red shift to occur with increased hydroxylation. A red shift means a change in the absorption maximum or lambda max to a longer wavelength or lower energy or towards the red end of the visible spectrum. Why is red used in the term red shift? Because red defines the long wavelength limit of visible light. It does not necessarily mean that the change results in the absorption of red light, nor the perception of a red hue, but neither does it preclude both. Even if a molecule isn't absorbing red light, a bathochromic shift follows the same pattern of moving toward the red side of the spectrum. Hence, red shift is a convenient shorthand. So, a red shift can mean a shift in lambda max from violet to blue, or from blue to green, or from green to yellow, and so on. It's about the direction of the shift, not necessarily into the red region, but not excluding that possibility, such as a shift from yellow to red or orange to red or anywhere near about 700 nanometers thereabouts. Such a red shift can also explain an increase in blueness as absorption at or near the red end results in colors observed at or near the violet end. We can therefore say that increasing hydroxylation leads to greater electron delocalization or mobility, resulting in easier excitation, which may lead to a hyperchromic shift or increased absorbance or a bathochromic shift or red shift or both. Now class, can a red shift result in the perception of red color? Let's examine this illustration to appreciate the impact of the number of hydroxyl and or methoxyl groups in the anthocyanidin structures. The chemical structures presented here are the frequently occurring anthocyanidins, also found in many plant parts and food products. The number and position of hydroxyl groups in the B ring of anthocyanidins significantly influence their chemical properties, color characteristics, and stability. Let's focus on the structures of pelargonidin, cyanidin, and delphindin, three compounds that differ only in the number of hydroxyl groups attached to the B ring. Anthocyanidins with more hydroxyl groups in the B ring tend to exhibit deeper and more intense colors because the hydroxyl groups contribute to the conjugated system of double bonds in the molecule, affecting the absorption spectrum of visible light. As a result, anthocyanidins like delphindin absorb light more efficiently compared to pelargonidin and cyanidin, and they emit more energy after excitation, leading to stronger or deeper blueness. This increase in color intensity is referred to as hyperchromic shift. It involves the increase in the intensity of absorption of visible light at a particular wavelength. In terms of stability, in general, anthocyanidins with more hydroxyl groups are more prone to degradation, especially in the presence of factors such as light, oxygen, and pH changes. Why so? Because hydroxyl groups can increase the susceptibility of the molecule to oxidative reactions and other degradation processes. As for the effects of substitution with methoxy groups, let's compare delphinidin, petunidin, and malvidin, These are compounds differing only in degree of methoxylation. Like hydroxyl groups, methoxy groups in the B ring of anthocyanidins also contribute to the modulation of color, but more specifically the degree of redness perceived. Swartz and co-authors say that oxochromes generally affect the depth of a color, with methoxy groups exerting a greater effect than hydroxyl groups since they, meaning the methoxy groups, have a greater electron donating capacity than hydroxyl groups. Now, what is meant by a deeper color? These authors do not define it, but we take it to mean a slight shift in wavelength within a particular region. Let's say something pinkish becomes red, dark red, or blood red. That's a deepening of the red hue. The same hue, red, but a different tone. They explain that the red shift due to methoxylation is because of the improved conjugation and resonance stability, which makes the chromophore more efficient in absorbing visible light. The presence of methoxy groups alters the electronic structure of the molecule, lending it greater electron mobility, requiring less amount of energy to get excited, affecting its ability to absorb and reflect light in the visible spectrum, and causing a pronounced bathochromic shift. Now here's the question. Can a hyperchromic shift also occur with methoxy substitution? What do you think? In terms of the effect on molecular stability, methoxy groups can enhance the stability of anthocyanidins by providing steric hindrance around the molecule, protecting the reactive hydroxyl groups, thus reducing susceptibility to oxidation and degradation processes when the molecule is exposed to light, oxygen, and changes in pH. Anthocyanin-containing foods rich in pelargonidine, cyanidine, and delphinidine are less stable than those rich in peonidine, petunidine, and malvidine due to the presence of methoxy groups in the latter. Anthocyanidins may also become less unstable through glycosylation at C3 position. The presence of a sugar moiety increases stability and solubility. Acylation can also affect the perceived color of the pigment. Acylation is the attachment of aliphatic acids like acetic, malic, succinic, oxalic, and others, or aromatic acids such as caffeic, ferulic, gallic, and others, in the sugar moiety in carbon 3. You might find it interesting to know that the names of the anthocyanidins here have been inspired by pink, red, purple, blue, and violet flowers. We have pelargonium or geranium for pelargonidine, cyanus or cornflower for cyanidine, delphinium for delphinidine, peony for peonidine, petunia for petunidine, and mallow or marshmallow, the flower, not the food, for malvidine. Most of these flowers are used in preparing herbal beverages. Petals from some of these are also used in preparing salads. Here's a question. Why do anthocyanidins with one or more methoxy groups in the B ring typically exhibit a purple or almost black color? Reiterating what's mentioned in the previous slides, increased hydroxylation decreases pigment stability, while increasing methoxylation increases stability. Addition of glycosyl groups in carbon 3 position of the aglycons may also increase stability. We've already discussed the reasons behind this. Let's now discuss the various structural forms of anthocyanins depending on the pH levels of aqueous media. Anthocyanins undergo reversible transformations which can also induce color changes of the pigment. In an aqueous solution at low pH, the flavillum structure dominates, thus showing a red color. An increase in the pH of the medium from, let's say, 3 to 6 results in hydration of the flavillum ion, and it is converted to colorless carbonyl base and chalcone-like compounds. Further increase in pH beyond 6 results in the formation of blue quinonoidal bases. This explains why a beverage with blue butterfly pea extract is naturally blue, but it turns pink when added with lemon or calamansi juice. Under acidic conditions, anthocyanins appear as red pigments, while under neutral and alkaline conditions, they appear blue. What are the factors that affect the stability of anthocyanins? Anthocyanin levels in food are affected by temperature, oxygen, pH, among many other determinants. Highly hydroxylated anthocyanins are less stable than methoxylated ones, thus they are more prone to thermal degradation. Heat-induced anthocyanin degradation involves the removal of glycosides from the molecule through the severance of the glycosidic bond. This is also known as anthocyanin hydrolysis, which results in unstable anthocyanidins. Oxygen and ascorbic acid can also contribute to anthocyanin degradation. Because anthocyanins are unsaturated in nature, they are prone to oxidation. Previous studies show that the presence of molecular oxygen in anthocyanin-rich fruit juices can degrade the purple pigment to dull brown. Proper filling of containers and use of modified atmosphere packaging can help delay the degradation. Ascorbic acid, when added to food, acts as an acidulant and also enhances the nutritional value of the product. However, ascorbic acid is prone to oxidation and may lead to the formation of hydrogen peroxide, which then oxidizes anthocyanins, leading to anthocyanin degradation and color loss. The breakdown products, including colorless esters and coumarin derivatives, may further degrade and lead to a brown precipitate that are usually seen in fruit juices from natural sources. Sugars also affect the stability of anthocyanins. Fruit jams rich in anthocyanins have better color retention at high sugar concentrations, leading to a lowered water activity. Thus, at high sugar concentrations, anthocyanins are stabilized. Low concentrations of sugar have little effect on water activity reduction, thus anthocyanins are prone to degradation. Anthocyanins react with sugar degradation products like furfural via condensation in the presence of oxygen, resulting in brown compounds usually seen in fruit juices. The brown compounds formed from this reaction may be the same as those formed from other types of reactions. Next, anthocyanins and metals. Anthocyanins can form complexes with certain metals, particularly under acidic conditions. These complexes can influence the color and stability of anthocyanin pigment. Certain metals like calcium, iron, aluminum, and tin can stabilize anthocyanins in cranberry juice, for example. This may be due to several mechanisms, including chelation, where the metal binds to the anthocyanin, reducing its interaction with other molecules that might cause degradation, or by acting as antioxidants themselves. A fruit discoloration problem in pears, peaches, and lychees, known as pinking, is due to the heat-induced conversion of colorless proanthocyanidins to anthocyanins. This happens under acidic conditions, and the reaction is followed by metal complex formation. Look at this illustration. The colors of blueberry and raspberry become more purple upon complexation of the anthocyanins with iron. This makes both of the anthocyanin-containing food items more stable during processing and storage. Sulfur dioxide may also influence the stability of anthocyanins. Sulfur dioxide at high concentrations acts as a bleaching agent, resulting in a colorless complex. It might seem unintuitive, but doing this protects the anthocyanins in food against light and oxygen exposure during processing or storage. The pigment can be reverted back upon removal of sulfur dioxide after processing. Additionally, this method also allows greater pigment extraction efficiency as sulfur dioxide induces cell wall permeability of plant materials as pigment sources. Another process affecting anthocyanin stability is copigmentation. This process can occur as self-association among anthocyanins or association with other organic compounds. This results in a more stable pigment. For instance, in winemaking, the covalent self-association of anthocyanins leads to the formation of more stable and complex wine pigments. Next, we have enzyme reactions. Enzyme reactions are associated with the decolorization of anthocyanins, specifically by glycosidases and polyphenol oxidases or PPO. These enzymes are known as anthocyanases. Glycosidases hydrolyze glycosidic bonds, resulting in separate sugar moieties and an aglycone. The instability of anthocyanidins or aglycone quickly transforms colored compounds to colorless products. Oxidation due to PPO also leads to a brown or colorless product. This may be formed when the structures of anthocyanins are altered or when polymers from anthocyanins are formed due to oxidation. Such polymers are brown or colorless. So how do we address these decolorization problems? 1. A short blanch treatment to inactivate anthocyanin-degrading enzymes can work. 2. The use of very low concentrations of sulfite. 3. The use of acidified conditions. And 4. Heat stabilization effect in the presence of sodium sulfite. Here are some strategies to address anthocyanin losses in food products from post-harvest to processing to storage. Post-harvest losses may be remedied by rapid cooling of fruits and vegetables to their optimal temperature. This can slow down enzymatic reactions that can degrade anthocyanins. Minimized handling. This prevents physical damage to fruits and vegetables, leading to color changes. Storing fruits and vegetables under controlled atmosphere. This lowers oxygen levels and increases carbon dioxide levels to slow down or halt anthocyanin degradation. Processing losses may be minimized by reduced cooking time and use of lower temperatures. Anthocyanins can easily be degraded by high temperatures, so low heat exposure and shorter cooking time, such as in blanching, can help prevent degradation. A slightly acidic environment during processing also helps preserve anthocyanins and may inhibit enzymatic activity. The addition of antioxidants like ascorbic acid in controlled amounts can also help protect anthocyanins. Also, avoidance of cooking in aqueous medium as water-soluble pigments can leach out. With regard to preventing storage losses, storage under controlled atmosphere may preserve the integrity of anthocyanins in food. Storage under cool and dark conditions can slow down enzymatic activity and protect anthocyanins from light exposure. The use of inert gas packaging can also help. Nitrogen flushing can displace oxygen, reducing the possibility of oxidative degradation of anthocyanins. Such strategies are important in maintaining the integrity of anthocyanins in food and in keeping food appealing and acceptable to consumers. Aside from anthocyanins, other flavonoids like anthocyanthins can also impart color. These other flavonoids are also water-soluble and result in white and yellow color in plant materials. This can be observed in cauliflower, onion, and potatoes. These flavonoids appear more yellow at higher concentrations, and similar to anthocyanins, they can also participate in copigmentation and metal complex formation, resulting in a more intense yellow color. Another class of flavonoids, the proanthocyanidins, are also worth mentioning. These are colorless or pale yellow colored flavonoids that may be transformed into colored products during processing. The main difference between proanthocyanidins and anthocyanidins is that the former are oligomers or polymers, while the latter are monomers. Proanthocyanidins are formed by the covalent linking of leucoanthocyanidins, which are monomers that don't contain any chromophore. What are the properties of proanthocyanidins? Proanthocyanidins are easily degraded upon exposure to air or light. They lack the strong chromophores or color-giving functional groups present in some related flavonoids. Upon degradation, they transform into red-brown stable derivatives, but note that this red-brown hue is not the color of proanthocyanidin, but the result of oxidation. In addition to this, proanthocyanidins can bind with proteins in saliva. This results in an astringent or sometimes bitter taste sensation associated with fruits and beverages like wine. Proanthocyanidins, as already mentioned, are colorless or slightly yellow oligomers or polymers, but when broken down into monomers during processing and storage, they can yield anthocyanidins like pelargonidin, petunidin, and delphinidin. Here's an example of a proanthocyanidin and its building blocks or monomer units. The reaction shows the formation of cyanidin and epicatechin from the hydrolysis of proanthocyanidin when it is heated under acidic conditions. Cyanidin and epicatechin are the flavonols present in cocoa beans, with epicatechin being more abundant than cyanidin. Among other phenolic compounds, proanthocyanidins are the most abundant in cocoa beans. By the way, the beans from the cacao tree or Theobroma cacao are commonly referred to as cacao beans when discussing them in their raw, unprocessed state. However, once these beans are fermented, dried, and roasted, they are often referred to as cocoa beans. Tannins are also water-soluble phenolics. They range in color from yellowish white to light brown and are found in oak wood, which imparts color to wines that are aged in oak barrels. There are also tannins in fruits. These water-soluble polyphenolic compounds are also known for their astringent properties, as they have the capacity to bind to proteins. This reaction makes proteins clump together and then precipitate out of solution. Because of this, tannins are valuable as clarifying agents. They also contribute to the color of black tea when catechins are converted to theaflavins and thearubigins. During fermentation of tea leaves, colorless catechins are converted to theaflavins, which are orange or red, or into thearubigins, which are red-brown or dark brown. Thearubigins are the most abundant polyphenolic component of black tea. Black tea has much less antioxidants compared to green tea due to the oxidation of phenolics, resulting in dark colors such as thearubigins and the typical black tea flavor. Tannins are comprised of two types: condensed tannins or proanthocyanidins and hydrolyzable tannins like pentagalloyl glucose. We've already discussed proanthocyanidins earlier, but let's review. Proanthocyanidins or condensed tannins are polymers of flavanthriols such as catechin and epicatechin. They are characterized by their complex, non-hydrolyzable structure consisting of flavonoid units linked by carbon-carbon bonds. These polymers can vary greatly in size, from dimers to large oligomers and even polymers. Condensed tannins are typically colorless in their native state, but upon oxidation, they can produce red or brown pigments. This oxidative process can occur during aging in foods like red wine and tea, contributing to their deep, rich colors. Hydrolyzable tannins are esters of gallic acid, called gallotannins, or esters of ellagic acid, called ellagitannins, with a sugar core, usually glucose. They are called hydrolyzable because they can be broken down into their component sugars and phenolic acids, namely gallic acid or ellagic acid, upon hydrolysis, especially under acidic or enzymatic conditions. Hydrolyzable tannins can contribute some color to plant tissues. Gallotannins are usually colorless or pale yellow, while ellagitannins can impart more intense colors. When hydrolyzed, the resulting phenolic acids can further react to form darker pigments, contributing to brown or reddish hues in processed foods and beverages. This ends the part on anthocyanins and other phenolics. Next and last, under colorants, we'll have a very short segment on betalains.